I am reading 3 essays on cosmology, philosophy, theology, sort of things, even some science fiction. Some of them were done years apart, incidentally. It's a weblog. And first one is from a course I took, a 2-year theology course. In reading The Holy War by John Bunyan, the effort of the son of a thinker to hammer together a writing venture with all of his effort is very clear. Bunyan spent 12 years in gaol on a 3-month sentence for attending an unauthorized by imperial rulers religious service. Being unwilling to quit his particular beliefs and attend the state church, his sentence probably rolled over. Besides Pilgrim's Progress, there's this brilliant work comparable to Dante's Inferno. The allegory of the fate of the town of man's soul being captured by the devil only with help from the inside and purging of captain resistance and innocence show how even modern people harden their hearts against the Lord and believe what Sartre calls false consciousness. Sartre's term about self-deception applies in the context of Jeremiah's "everyone knows me, they just forget intentionally who I am." My philosophical analytical disposition would lead me to say that awareness of being for others and being for oneself are biologically phenomenal characteristics. Humans have implicitly in self-aware cogito, fancy neurological configurations of dust put to breathing. All are saved through grace rather than merit. In reading Holy War by John Bunyan, one discovers in the allegory how the town of man's soul was captured by the top fallen angel. The wicked one has numerous ways of applying self-deceit. Self-deceit is an existential threat. Holy War, pages 123, 124, quote, "The lords of looseness send to the great and high Diabolus from our dens, caves, holes, and strongholds in and about the wall of the town of man's soul, greeting. Our great Lord and the nourisher of our lives, Diabolus, how glad we were when we heard of your fatherhood's readiness to comply with us and help forward our design and our attempts to ruin man's soul. None can tell but those who, as we do, set themselves against all appearance of good when and wheresoever we find it. Touching the encouragement that your greatness is pleased to give us, to continue to devise, contrive, and study the utter desolation of man's soul, that we are not solicitous about, for we know right well that it cannot but be pleasing and profitable to us to see our enemies and them that seek our lives die at our feet, or fly before us. We therefore are still contriving, and that to the best of our cunning, to make this work most facile and easy to your lordships and to us. First, we considered of that most hellishly cunning compacted threefold project that by you was propounded to us in your last, and have concluded that though to blow them up with the gunpowder of pride would do well, and do it by tempting them to be loose and vain will help on, yet to contrive to bring them into the gulf of desperation we think will do best of all. Now we, who are at your beck, have thought of 2 ways to do this. First, we, for our parts, will make them as vile as we can, and then you with us, at a time appointed, shall be ready to fall upon them with the utmost force. And any of all the nations that are at your whistle, we think that an army of doubters may be the most likely to attack and overcome the town of man's soul. Thus shall we overcome these enemies, else the pit shall open her mouth upon them, and desperation shall thrust them down into it. We have also to effect this so much by us desired design, sent already 3 of our trusty diabolans. Among them they are disguised in garb, they have changed their names, and now are accepted to them, namely covetousness, lasciviousness, and anger. The name of covetousness is changed to prudent thrifty, and him Mr. Mind is hired and is almost become as bad as our friend. Lasciviousness has changed his name to harmless mirth, and he has got to be the Lord Willoughby's lackey. But he has made his Wilbewill's lackey, but he has made his master very wanton. Anger changed his name into Good Zeal, and was entertained by Mr. Godly Fear, but the peevish old gentleman took pepper in the nose and turned our companion out of his house. Nay, he has informed us since that he ran away from him, or else his old master had hanged him up for his labor. Now these have much helped forward our work and design upon man's soul. For notwithstanding the spite and quarrelsome temper that old gentleman had last mentioned, the other 2 ply their business well and are likely to ripen the work apace. Our next project is that it be concluded that you come upon the town upon a market day, and that when they are upon the heat of their business, for then to be sure they will be most secure, and least think that an assault will be made upon them. They will also at such a time be less able to defend themselves and to offend you in the prosecution of our design. And we, your trusty, and we are sure your beloved ones, shall, when you shall make your furious assault without, be ready to second the business within. So shall we, in all likelihood, be able to put man's soul to utter desolation, confusion, and to swallow them up before they can come to themselves. If your serpentine heads, most subtle dragons, and our highly esteemed lords can find out a better way than this, let us quickly know your minds to the monsters of the infernal cave from the house of Mr. Mischief and man's soul by the hand of Mr. Profane." End quote. On a model logic parameter for the necessity of heaven, Holy War suggests the question, isn't the eternal presence, the Lord in heaven, the only way necessary for people with no good in them, no, not one, to remain free from sin for eternity? That seems logically necessary in a modal logic kind of way. Here is more about the issue. There are numerous inferences to life after death in heaven in the Bible. Especially notable is the Revelation chapter 2. John Bunyan's book Holy War provides a modal logic glimpse of the reason why heaven may be structured as it is. Consider that mankind is susceptible to sin. Even if saved and cleansed from sin, it seems that Christians may still be subject to temptation to sin occasionally, getting snared. What better remedy than to have the Lord live in one's presence with the Spirit of God defending the soul against sin? What better place to live than in a New Jerusalem, where the heavenly city is cleansed from all diabolic traces? The people of man's soul realize the problem of original sin and its tendency for eternal recurrence. With free will, mankind requires ongoing help even in heaven, apparently. Bunyan's allegorical account of how the city of man's soul, created by God, yet fall into occupation of the devil, even with the free willingness of the people of man's soul to have the devil as their prince, is liberated by the Lord, remains true to the Lord. Man's soul is, I suppose, representative of Jerusalem and the New Jerusalem when the Lord physically returns to take possession. God chose David as the king of the Jews to make his capital in Jerusalem and the place where his temple would be built. God had the priest king Melchizedek, perhaps a pre-incarnate Christ, appear to Abraham as at the future site of Jerusalem. The writer of Hebrews said that Jesus is a priest after the order of Melchizedek. Plainly, Jerusalem has special meaning as a place where God appears. Following the expulsion of Diabolus from the town of man's soul in a successful reconquista accomplished after much strife with great cost and loss of life, the people of man's soul are rehabilitated to a certain extent. They expect judgment and doom, for they have had enough warnings, yet are eventually forgiven by the Lord. The people of man's soul realize that they have no virtue that can save themselves and ask for the mercy of God, the Lord, to keep them free and in his good graces as his servants. And that will be the end of part 1 of this collection of 3 essays. Millions of Christians are taught wrong theology. The world should be expected to become corrupted and under the rule of the Antichrist, and Christians will be raptured away from the mess, people believe. That has practical and devastating political consequences. Radio and television broadcast pastors expound end times theology that are in error. Entire denominations are corrupted with Darwinist ideas without accurate scientific guidance of the theologically informed. Maybe Jesus didn't really say this or that, or mean it. After all, he was a good ethicist, yet not a believer in unscientific magic. So throw out God and keep a safe secular Christianity. Because Christians are often wrong in understanding Genesis and science correctly, the truth is little heard and corruption fills the void. The media largely dismiss Christians as intellectual Luddites, increasingly. Popular creation science by Christians made as an alternative to evolution theory are a joke. Bayes' ideas about intelligent design were wrong. Husserl's dating system for creation was a good effort. That was incorrect. My thesis is an apologetic for Christian truth with new ideas. An update to mainstream issues for Christianity and civilization. It concerns widespread errors in understanding the beginning and end times of the creation that are popular. The errors are compounded by clerical problems, church establishments, and bureaucracies that are too slow to change theory and theology, while human knowledge and society proceed apace, accumulating data and generating a history of ideas that are not well absorbed because individuals die and cannot continue their ideas. Integrating various fields of knowledge into a comprehensive whole takes a lot of time if an individual even chooses the right research to integrate. that people don't encounter the right information early in a career, if ever to develop accurate ideas about cosmology and hermeneutics is to be expected, it also needs to be surpassed. The thesis, or treatise, is my humble effort to view the issues holistically rather than with a fragmented composite hermeneutic. My belief is that God could have evolved the universe, yet that is a simplistic way to think of it that arises in the thought of those with a dismissive attitude toward theistic evolution because of the contingent status of human beings who have very limited knowledge of God and his omnipotence, omniscience, and omnipresence. It is also the case that the concept of theistic evolution is itself reductionist and overly simplistic, perhaps to the point of being regarded as a straw man that distracts from deeper consideration of the mechanics of creation, relevant hermeneutic, and cosmological concepts of what are regarded as natural philosophy. God, in effect, owns the entire universe and everything in it. That which people claim to own is the area that they exert their will upon. It's still owned by God. That's his space being used for that. It isn't necessary to equate God's creative acts with human concepts too much, for human methods and ideas are perhaps trivial or foolish, detritus of creation in a steady-state quantum field to God. Although some logicians and theologians may make statements concerning the necessity of the truth of mathematical logic. This part of the video was made 9 years after the first part, which was in 2015. Reading about cosmology, theology, and science fiction here. What if the universe is configured like neural architecture and thinks for itself, in itself? Victor Scriabin wondered aloud, could it reshape itself or any relevant universe or transfer information, perhaps cloning it, to other universes as its mind thought it expedient? What if the universe is bigger than a bread box, smaller than a bread box too, yet it is not a bread box at all? Laura replied. How very Zen-like of you, Laura. Humans and other three-dimensional shaped mass can only exist in 3 dimensions, the Ehrenfest limit. So we must need some sort of dimensional compensator to translate our mass into n-dimensional configurations. Universes has nothing more than expressions of a unified field forces separated from a monistic initial configuration into several. 4 dimensions, including time in our own universe, for instance. There seems to be one primary force for each primary dimension and confluence of dimensions. Maybe the forces on separation are stacked upon one another or integrate within one another in a complete complex of universal compresence, phenomenalizing time as motion. No matter, it could just be that spirit is the foundation of energy, that is in turn the core of force in various configurations. I saw a dimensional compensator unit glancing through the patents from Mars you've added to my digital storage microdot. And I'll move to another portion of what I'm reading here. Quantum field theory, QFT, describes some of the characteristics and strengths of quantum fields. Advanced QFT relates the behaviors of fields mathematically in relation to other fields occurring in 4 dimensions of space-time, allowing fractional changes to the spin eigenvalues of constituent energy packets after they are converted into just numbers. 1-dimension points may be inducted with virtual fields and built between quantum field values with charges that adequately mirror quantum field objects, bringing into 4 dimensions and with higher mass and dimensions virtual quantum fields. With their feet transformed through virtual integration into adaptive synthetic virtual field values, the resident AI was able to calculate and configure their feet to any surface field existing on the Mabubtag structure. My feet feel quite a bit better, Victor. I haven't been resting them at a desk for quite some time, Laura said. So let's go gather some intel on the far side of the Mabubtag structure, wherever that will be. Victor Scriabin replied that according to my data stream, it is about 1,700 miles downward, diagonally speaking. With our feet converting to numbers, Laura said, this mission to recover the patents of the dwindled worlds has become somewhat ethereal even for me, Victor. The Forensics Accounting Office encounters a wide variety of structures, tax shelters, thefts, and relocations of resources. Yet the transuniversal infinities of universes leave me rather baffled concerning direction. Let's say a prayer before we proceed. All right, Victor. All right with me, Laura, Victor said, taking a knee. What prayer would you like? Joining Victor and taking a knee, she replied, "Something about the Peccavi of Peccaries that would be good to hear from the networked criminals if they were conscionable at all. Instead of that, let's go for the multiverse Ferris prayer." They prayed together. "Jesus, Savior, pilot me across the multiverse's troubled seas. Extra dimensions ahead, infinite universes behind. Lead me beyond omegas and unstable temporal non-primes." When they finished their prayer, the molecules around them seemed to resonate with a subtle energy, and they felt a strange connection to the vast hidden universe. With renewed determination, they set out on their journey to uncover the secrets of the Nemgruda Mabutag facility and the elusive CEOs of Serenity. They rose gracefully from the ground, engaging in a peculiar skate walk over the surface topology. Each step resonated with the underlying molecular composition of the structure, as if tapping into its very essence for information. If numbers are mere fractions of a whole, or find meaning only in the context of a series, why aren't they boundlessly infinite in quantity and size, extending limitlessly across every position and dimension, Laura? Infinities as arbitrary sets delimit paradigms. How can transfinite series akin to Cantor's revelations possess a distinct identity greater or lesser than the infinite continuum spanning all possible dimensions? Victor, your contemplation stems from the premise that numbers serve as the foundational bedrock for all energy and mass. If gravity and thermodynamics coexist in every universe, there must be a process governing the evolution of sets across the vast expanse of possible numbers. Why do numbers manifest as temporally finite sets akin to squalls across an infinite sea? Could they be echoes, remnants of an idea transcending from some divine origin? Isaac Newton's spinning bucket experiment efforts, like those of the pre-Socratic philosophers Parmenides and Heraclitus, no, they weren't partners, examine the nature of the volume that is space. If one spun a bucket half full of water, ran in a circle at the end of a rope somewhere in the void, would gravity or centripetal force keep the bucket's water at the bottom? One might wonder about quantum spin and how the fields in which quantum spin are affected or drawn in a special direction compare. We would say space-time rather than just space, yet that may be a convention too, as time seems like a secondary rather than a primary quality of space and mass. Time cannot appear without mass, energy, or matter to act upon, with differential values in relation to the location and characteristics of mass. If mass in one or two-dimensional fields passes through other two-dimensional surfaces, that may create the appearance of time and relative motion at present points of juxtaposition. One might wonder about the nature of the volume that contains a universe or universes, or any possible configuration of universes, including a multiverse. Typically, physicists tend to describe the configuration of matter or antimatter and energy existentially and phenomenally as if only mass and energy existed rather than a volume of space. It seems rather plain that a volume of space, a true empty void that hosts the universe, doesn't figure into calculations of modern cosmology. Instead, various fields arising from an initial solitary unified field, one indubitably made of energy, a singular sort and condition of energy, pervades the expanse of the universe. The universe exists only as far as the fields expanding from the initial singular unified field at time equals 0, t equals 0, have traveled. Those fields may be encountering unknown content within the true void or not. There are many interesting points about the four basic fields of the universe that one might consider. Gravity is said to have split off first, followed by the strong force. The strong force split and released the electroweak force, dividing into the weak force. Electromagnetism in the Higgs field arose. Apparently each of these fields must equally pervade the entire universe, yet they may induce local field phenomena that appear in the presence of entangled mass and energy. Did gravity actually split off? For a moment, consider Einstein's criterion of space being warped or curved by concentrated mass with gravity. It isn't space that is curved, though it may appear so. Instead, mass is quanta existing outside of it, as if mass were an aircraft carrier battle group with the carrier at the center, surrounded by a constellation of smaller defense ships and allocations of resources, financial resources. There is a thicker cloud of particles surrounding concentrations of mass that entangle or deflect photons or other particles traveling near it. It could be that the field in which those particles exist is warped in relation to mass, or that the quantity of waves or virtual particles that exist in the field statistically attract particles traveling near the mass to alter their course in proportion to the quantity of virtual particles in proximity to the mass concentration. What is called space-time is different than the volume of void that hosts it. Space-time, mass, and energy is regarded as having 4 dimensions. Yet no one knows what a dimension is or if it is made of anything. The field energy filling the entire universe or making the entire universe is thicker and thinner in various regions as far as mass, dark matter, energy, and dark energy go. Overall, one might expect that it logically should be generally equally distributed in all directions, from the time equals 0 expansion, though not exactly. Because energy is charged, it could cancel out through various means such as matter and antimatter contacts and spin anisotropy and generally uneven distributions. It is also the case that energy becoming entangled in the Higgs field generates the appearance of mass and mass is a secondary characteristic of the fields that comprise the universe rather than primary. It is possible that there is a difference between primary and secondary fields and field phenomena. The speed of light is the fastest possible speed for matter or energy entangled in the Higgs field, yet the primary fields are not subject to the laws of general relativity, perhaps, unlike possible secondary fields like electromagnetism. Gravity itself may be just a field-generated phenomena and a secondary phenomena without a graviton to transfer its power. It is a good idea not to consider laws as primary and real physical things when philosophically contemplating structures of cosmology. Some wonder about the spooky action at a distance of quantum entanglement. Mass in one location may entangle quanta with quantum mass at a distance. Perhaps the concatenated quantum entanglement of mass with other mass at a distance faster than light creates a secondary effect of mass attracting other mass at light speed. Light speed would be slow in comparison to the faster than light status of primary fields hosting the matter and sublight speed energy of the universe. Gravity waves would be generated by mass quantum entanglement comparable to the way that waves may be generated in the water of a swimming pool by a mechanical push at one end of the pool, even though water is made up of individual particles, molecules. Gravity waves in the normal human universe of experience reflect mass quantum entanglement occurring in primary fields faster than light and lacking the spatial distance values inherent in the subliminal universe of mass. Still, it is interesting to consider a bucket world at the end of a rope half full of water that is an empty space. There is a problem with the definition of empty space affecting the outcome of the experiment. If the bucket was spun in this universe, it would be acted on by fields pervading this universe. If it was truly in the void that hosts the universe and the universe did not exist, just the bucket and the experimenter, then the experiment and the bucket would be quite anomalous. There would be microgravity in this universe, while in the true void not even the experimenter or bucket could exist, since they are generated from quantum field entanglements effects in the Higgs field. Some experimenters and theorists have conjectured about extra dimensions, maybe smaller ones, that might exist in the universe in order to explain the structure of matter. Beside the obvious problems that appear when considering time as a dimension with factors of general relativity at the quantum scale, there is the problem of the nature of the void that hosts the universe. How many dimensions does it have, and could a universe appearing within it have more dimensions than the pure space void? Can a true void host infinite numbers of dimensions? I believe some physicists have said that a pure void does not exist, and that only matter and energy exist, even if it is stretched very thin. Plainly, though, fields are primary and exist, although in what form is to a degree still unknown. Fields exist and dimensions exist, at least within the space-time of the universe, where matter and energy arise in a Higgs field. Maybe the host fields don't have the same dimension as the contingent universe we live in, entangled as mass in a Higgs field, because they are not like this universe spatially. There is no distance comparable to the scales of this universe. Light speed is not a meaningful speed in fields without distances based on mass relations, a contingent phenomena. The fields, as separate from the one singular field, may be stacked together like layers in computer chips and convey information in a different way. For a trivial example, horizontally and vertically rather than in a simple linear vector, nonlinear time passage based on a stacked layered field information would perhaps be different than that of inertially driven mass with relativistic time, such as occurs with special relativity combined with general relativity. Plainly, though, stacked four-dimensional time is compatible with general relativity. I wonder about the basic question, can this universe have more dimensions than that of the true void? And I think the answer is no. If a true logical void is just three dimensions and one of time, then it probably wouldn't be possible to construct a 23-dimension or 230-dimensional material universe within it. Mathematicians obviously can't construct multidimensional models simply changing a number value, a variable, because it's in mind. That sort of multiverse might have no corresponding value or possibility in the actual universe. Aristotle believed that words have a necessary relation to real objects, and that logic would therefore bring the true results when formulating logical equations about objects of the real world. Subsequent logicians discovered that words and material objects haven't a necessary relationship at all. That paradigm probably exists between mathematical models of quantum cosmology and actual quantum cosmology. It is a great tool that, applied probabilistically for making judgments, provides valuable insight, yet fails of the kind of rigorous logical type that Aristotle sought when inventing classical logic, although some dispute that he invented classical logic. A logical volume of absolute space would seem to have three spatial dimensions. A physicist friend of Einstein said that human life couldn't exist in a universe with more than three dimensions. That's the Ehrenfest limit, and one of time. That judgment was made concerning the structure of quantum particles, yet if one considers a true void, primary empty space without fields, with more than three spatial dimensions, perhaps six or more, it becomes increasingly difficult to imagine a coherent universe structure existing within it. Could dimensions rather than being fields of some unknown nature that exist in a true void be better compared to vector directions? Within a three-dimensional unbounded true void, there might be a veritable Cantorian infinite number of vector dimensions radiating out of some central point, or simplicity in visualizing the structure, or existing in an infinite number of other ways, like straight spaghetti strands of some thicker or thinner value than others. So while a universe built from three strands of spaghetti-like dimensions added together could be elected to build a universe in, there could be thinner, smaller spaghetti strands mixed with it at the quantum level to support loop quantum or something like mini spaghetti strings. That is, with or without spaghetti sauce of extra fields in it, Higgs-like fields. A quantum chef of spaghetti sauce may explain the secret recipe someday. Laura, why do numbers existing within an infinite continuum at every conceivable location of a field gravitate towards each other? What prompts an increase or decrease of value anywhere, considering any place is as good as nowhere? Could a spatial field, perhaps a concoction of charged virtual particles, surge like a hernia, distort space-time and manifest as elements with cardinal or ordinal differentiations in no space? The infinite quantity at every location hints at a relative scalar difference, explaining the causality of magnitude, three-dimensional intrusions. Laura nodded thoughtfully. You raise valid questions, Victor. It intrigues me why 7 causes of gravity exist and why gravity itself persists if numbers on an intrusive upsurge into the fabric of non-space. Laura nodded thoughtfully. You raise valid questions, Victor. It intrigues... Paradoxes of unknown compositions of gravity, fields and dimensions arise even more theoretical structures to engineer. For instance, could dimensions entailing fields be inserted through stars and their nuclear furnaces to absorb energy and transfer it far beyond the star in coherent charged particles streaming? Victor considered her words. What, Laura, could fields be structured with dimensions forming flat two-dimensional surfaces, passing through stars going in one side and out the other for millions of miles like vast charged microscope slides? I suppose that's possible. Fields are reducible in practical measure to numbers. Numbers undeniably exist, Laura. Just look down at our feet. Inequalities pervade the vast universes of mass and energy functioning as machinery orchestrating existence through revolutions of thermodynamic ordered change. A greater entity always seems to transcend pre-existing forms and series. Mathematics can model or reflect real ordinal positions and consistent relations of mass in the universe with known numbers of dimensions and observable order of mass. That criterion is valid just within our normal universe of human origin. Since the ordinal relations of mass in other universes are not necessarily similar to those of our universe, neither need the mathematics of this universe be the same as another universe, x1, x2, x3, etc. In fact, the mathematics can be different between different combinations. And numbers of dimensions. It isn't enough to simply extrapolate with mathematics adjusted for extra dimensions to learn about the new structure of higher dimensional universes. The mathematics and structures of higher dimensional universes may change with progressive, non-translatable cardinal number permutations. You believe that mathematics may be local and relative? God, at least, isn't grounded to just one universe and its mathematical values. Legend has it that God issued his word, unleashing waves of change, though with the displacement of dimensional nothingness. Laura mused, I've often questioned what factor set the values of dimensions at a specific point, or if the value is perpetually destined for infinity. Perhaps we should focus on acquiring data about the Mabutag structure. And I guess that's it for reading this thread for today.